a look at what Hagen did Saturday night in his minor league debut?
Yeah, got to watch his outing. It was fun. Like when you've had a season in college like he has, we had a nice sit down with him and his agent, kind of planning out what does the second half of the season look like. I strongly believe in not deloading pitchers too much. So great back and forth, gave them some options, let them talk about it, and ultimately, I think we got to the point like go out there and compete a little bit. So it was fun to see him bring his electric arm into professional baseball and throw well. And I think it's always tricky when you've had a really good season. You've kind of been at the top of the college game to go out there and kind of reset and just throw a few outings at the end of a minor league season where it's new surroundings and new teammates. But it was a fun outing to watch.
How important is it? We've heard a couple of you guys now say about you had Hagen very involved in the process, explaining to him what was going on. For a guy who's, by all accounts, going to be a huge part of what you guys are planning to do next, how important is it to get him involved and really give him, even at this early stage, some input on what's going to happen?
I'm a big believer. There's a new dynamic now with the analytics and the facilities around the country, whether it's driveline, tread, a local regional place that the pitchers go to. Some of them like to go back to their college campuses because they have analytics there and they have strong relationships with those coaches. So I believe it's kind of like a relay race. You hand the baton to whoever they're going to go work with in the off season. Instead of just purely trusting them, you develop relationships with these people, and they're very good coaches and very good facilities in their own right. Especially the dead period now in the minor leagues. So you want to make sure that those pitchers are taken care of year round, and especially with higher profile pitchers that you expect to really contribute to your big league team. You just want to start off on the right note. Sometimes it's antagonistic, the club versus wherever they want to work out with, whether it's a guru, whether it's a facility. Instead of just having great communication year-round, I'm a big believer in that. Develop the relationships, make sure they're supported, don't have information gaps, and just get off to a good start.
Given how accomplished he was in the SEC, is he a guy who could move quickly through the system?
I'm just a believer that, my dad back in the day threw only a couple games in the minor leagues and then was in the big leagues for 15 years. Everybody always wants a pitcher to shoot through the system and be right there. I remember when I was coming up, Tim Lincecum shot through and kind of exploded on the scene, guys like that. But I think you just want them to establish that they are progressing and dominating at their own pace, regardless of outside expectations. So we never internally put those expectations or timelines on a pitcher. Let them kind of read their body, get used to the routine, get used to the travel, get used to the recovery times, and just go out there and have fun and be themselves. And I think that dictates when they get up here.
It's early for him, but as a guy who dominated kind of with two pitches in college, just seeing him or seeing video of him give a view of whether maybe a cutter is a bridge pitch for him or what shape his changeup will take based on like what he already does well.
Yeah, and I think we're going to explore that, not here at the end of the first season, but with Rodon, we added a little curveball after he came from here to San Francisco. I'm a big believer when you have two dominant pitches, you show a change of pace third pitch. But there are numerous examples of power lefties in the big leagues that primarily pitch with two pitches. The Rodons, the Robbie Rays. I mean, they've been very successful with two and just showing a third to some extent. Corbin, when he took a step forward with Arizona, added the third slower breaking ball and carried that over to Washington. So you see that happen over and over again. So it's a pretty established template that if they have an elite fastball, an elite slider, whether it's a changeup, whether it's a slower curveball, whether it's a cutter bridge pitch, you just want to explore that, dive into it, and see what the hitters are reacting to.
What did you like, just with the eye test, seeing him throw, analytics aside, what saw him throw the other night when you're watching? What did you see that kind of made you say, this guy's
in today's game with all the velo, I actually watch the hitter's body language more than anything, whether they can see the ball. We had Ryan Walker in San Francisco who literally steps across his body like towards third base, and when he throws a pitch, hitters come back like, I can't see the ball. And so that's as important to me nowadays as velocity. Like, can the hitters see the ball? Can they distinguish between pitch types? Because you're always trying to get pitches to move in opposite directions. So when I watched his outing, the fastball looked like it was on a line. Hitters looked like they were struggling to pick it up because he does hide it well behind his body. You rarely see lefty velo like that at the lower level. So, you know, a combination of all those factors, but I primarily watch the hitter's body language, and there were a lot of encouraging signs.
Noah's been so dominant in what you've asked him to do this year, Winston-Salem and then Birmingham too. It was brought up yesterday, by design, he's gone to 4 innings every start, every second. How much of a jump is it going to be for him to go from this year to in the regular rotation period next year, where maybe pitching twice a week sometimes, or something just once?
Yeah, different organizations we did in San Francisco last year have experimented with shorter inning duration, piggyback type situations. I think there's different ways to approach it with a younger athlete who's kind of on an accelerated timeline, just to prioritize their health, but make sure they're competing and getting that development. So I think there's still things we want to do with him. He was able to throw with us up here right after his Futures game outing, and he's got unbelievable talent and great feel for somebody with limbs that long and being that tall. And so his repeatability is great. Would like to get a little more swing and miss in there and a couple other attributes. But I think he's done tremendous for himself with what he's done across 2 levels this year.
How long is it going to take him to kind of build up that innings base, as a guy who can eventually be up here and throw 7 innings in a game?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see so many starters now doing 5 and dives, and I don't think it's a huge leap to get to the point where you're pitching kind of the duration where a lot of pitchers are pitching nowadays. I don't think it's a huge jump. I think it's more, is his arsenal ready? Is he physically ready? Does he feel prepared? The games like the Futures games, I've seen pitchers go there and not have great experiences because it's the best hitters you faced up to that point. There's a lot of hype. You're on the big stage. But those are great experiences. You want to chalk those up and know how that felt so you can get out there, whether it's working on your breathing, working on your composure, and be able to execute. So I think getting to 5+ innings in the big leagues is the next logical step, but it's making sure the arsenal is taken care of and he knows how to handle platoon issues with hitters. He's not tipping, things like that on the development side still.
When you were talking to the Sabre seminar, you were talking about how fastball usage is something we're going to continue to see go down. Noah, especially being his fastball being the thing that people are able to make contact with. You see him as being one of those guys that works really slider heavy or really shows very little of his heater when he gets to this level.
Yeah, you see somebody like Chris Sale having a renaissance this year, and I had him in Boston after he was here, and he's bumped up his slider usage this year, and he's kind of back to his dominant ways. We had experimented with different, 4-seam, 2-seam combinations with him. So there are examples and templates to kind of go off of. I think him throwing some 4-seamers at the top of the zone to complement the natural 2-seamer he throws, leveraging his breaking ball usage a little bit, maybe having a bridge pitch in there, or we've been able to do some seam effect stuff when we tried it out with him, but not trying to overwhelm him in the short term, let him get out there. He used to being a professional pitcher and just the requirements that go along with that. But really preparing him effectively to pitch here is going to be important. But there's definitely things we can tweak as he gets closer to here.
He's been here now for almost a year. Just top to bottom, organizational wise, what have you noticed about the pitching depth that this organization does have?
I think they did a tremendous job of giving us a lot of interesting arms last year, and I think we went into the off season and even spring training this year with some of the better arms in the league, and I think that's played out regardless of if those arms are still here or not right now. I think the tricky part is, from an offensive perspective, and this is not a criticism, but everybody knows we need more production there, and so we've had to subtract from the pitching side in order to kind of game plan for the future on the hitting side, as well as identify things that we can do to bring more production up here. So I've been impressed with the arms we started out with, and they've continued to go and pitch well for other teams as well. But I think regardless of if you pitch well, you have to score runs, you have to play defense, and we've been behind in those areas. So we'll keep developing pitching. Whether it's Davis Martin throwing a new changeup or Jonathan Cannon working with the seam effects arsenal and starting to figure that out. He's got to address some slug against lefties. But those are all things rookie pitchers have to figure out. And I thought they've done a good job of coming up and being basically league average pitchers in their first season, which is a hat tip to them. So I'm confident that we're going to keep developing pitchers, even if we have to subtract from the pitching side to bolster the other areas too. But the conversations that go on the pitching side, pitching development side, have been really good this year.
What do you think of the state of starting pitching as a whole? You know, there seems to be a push around baseball to get it back to, you know, where they're going 6, 7 innings, which hasn't been the case, even especially in the playoffs. What do you think? You think that change is feasible to add more length to starting pitching?
Yeah, it was actually the topic of my Talk at Saber seminar over the weekend. We've been pushed because of analytics, because of pitch data. We've been pushing the envelope for over a decade now on the pitching side, and I think what we're starting to see is the first signs of pushback in the game of baseball, which is a traditional slow-moving game, slow to respond to rules changes, things like that. We're starting to see kind of a move towards rebalancing the game. We saw it with the elimination of sticky stuff by pitchers to lower spin rates. We've seen it with the elimination of extreme defensive shifts, which were making it tough for pull-oriented lefties to get hits, things like that. You know, with the ABS zone, the challenge zone coming to spring training next year, which I believe will happen. We've had it in AAA for a while now. Manfred talking about, you know, the elimination of openers or having extreme penalties if you use an opener, as well as starting pitchers kind of having a minimum duration or even extending the duration of relievers. I think what you're seeing is similar to other sports. I always use golf as a comparison. In major tournaments, they make the fairways more narrow, they make the rough higher, they put restrictions on you know, equipment, exit velos, and you see golf in 2028, they're doing a golf ball rollback to limit the distance of the tour players. So there's things I believe are on the horizon, both that have been talked about in the public realm and that I think they might consider in the future. And I think what it'll be is forcing pitchers to have better command, to throw more strikes, forcing hitters to prioritize a little more contact over trading off swing and miss for power. I think things like that will continue to get rebalanced, even though it'll probably take a while to find a way that jives with what baseball has looked like in the past and what we kind of have to do in an analytics game right now. And so I don't think just continue to push velo and insane strikeout rates both on the pitcher side and hitter side is good for the game, both from a health perspective and an entertainment perspective. But if you look at basketball, it's all three-pointers, layups and dunks. You know, I was looking at Wimbledon for my speech, and it's all baseline play now, and they don't go to the net anymore. You see this kind of elimination of the middle element in all these sports because of analytics, and the middle element in baseball is putting the ball in play versus just trying to hit it over the fence. So I think there's things that we're prepared for, and I'm always kind of looking ahead, what's the next thing in kind of the meta game of baseball, to be prepared to make sure we acquire the right players, that we're doing the right thing on the development side. So there's things we'll make adjustments as need be, but I think changes are on the horizon.
What sort of consideration is being given to maybe shutting Garrett down at some point before the end of the season?
Garrett's a competitor, and he wants to be out there. He doesn't want to be treated like a reliever. He's bona fide one of the best starters in the league at this point. You know, he made great adjustment adding the cutter into his arsenal, and between his raw fastball velo, his extension, the power cutter, the ability to show a changeup or sweeper, I believe is his number one starter. And so I don't think you want to treat a number one starter any different. And so I think he's going to go out there and continue to pitch, even though it's in an abbreviated sense right now. But he's still dominant. He still loves to compete, and I'm really looking forward to what he can do in the future with a full season under his belt.
The question I get a lot is whether the White Sox can add a Brian Bannister for hitting, and I don't think you hear necessarily analogous stories of guys tweaking their swing in one batting pad, testing like the way you added pitch to Davis Martin. But is there kind of a ability to have a similar impact to what you're able to do in pitching on the offensive side that this organization can look into?
You know, a lot of what we've been doing behind the scenes is talking about how can we get better in every area, both resource-wise, data capture-wise, communication-wise, and I think we're actively addressing all of those things right now in order to achieve upside surprises with players. That's the beauty of player development nowadays. You can literally impact a player's career with one modification, and so trying to project players is so difficult nowadays, and that's why I always talk about finding the right ingredients, because if you have things to work with on the PD side, all it takes is one good conversation or one adjustment, and all of a sudden they go from a below average player to a league average or above average player. And you want to see those things happening in all aspects of players' games, whether it's on the pitching side, the defensive side, the hitting side. So we've been talking about what does it take for us to get to the point where that's happening with all our players in all areas. And I think those conversations have been really productive and healthy. And I think it's kind of turning a new page for the organization. And I know, I'm a pitching advisor, but I've tried to just bring a lot of experiences from my previous organizations in here and kind of give some outside perspective. And I think we're going to be doing some really cool stuff in the short term that will be very good for the Chicago White Sox.
I guess, are there comparable ways to have, not quick fixes, but basically fixes that have immediate results in the way that we see where adding a pitch to a guy or changing his angle or some things where it seems like it clicks right away. It seems like that doesn't happen as often offensively, or do you see it differently?
It's definitely easier on the pitching side because I would say we set the table and the hitters have to eat off the table. And so it's easier and quicker to do on the pitching side. Hitters are more reactionary. There's a lot of bat path things. There's a lot of approach things, zone discipline and swing decision things. So a lot of it is kind of what's your macro approach to hitting. Are you able to locate parts in the zone where a pitcher's vulnerable and have the discipline on the hitting side to not chase elsewhere and really lock in? I know that was a big part of our approach on the 2021 Giants team, where we had great success on the pinch hitting side. We had a lot of upside surprises offensively, and it was able to simplify the hitting, which is so difficult to begin with, and pitchers are just getting nastier by the year with all the technology we have. And so I think you have to find ways to simplify hitting so that there are more upside surprises both at the minor league level and the major league level.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're good.
We all silly like the mayor.